Okay. So welcome everyone. We're gonna wait just a few moments. I know a few of you are logging on, so I'm gonna just kind of fill some time while people are logging on. So I'll go ahead and get started. So hello everyone, and thank you for joining the Foundation for Animal Care and Education's webinar on humane rattlesnake avoidance, presented by Lynn Webb of the Proficient Pup. There you are. My name is Annie Peterson, and I'm the Education Manager for the FACE Foundation, and I'll moderate today's webinar. The FACE Foundation is a nonprofit organization that helps to prevent economic euthanasia in our community due to financial limitations of their pet parents. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over some Zoom things. I'm sure many of you are really familiar with Zoom. Some of you may not be, so I'm just going to go over a couple of things. So all of you are muted to avoid background noise, and the camera feature is turned off so we can focus all of our attention on Lynn. You will have an opportunity to ask questions throughout the presentation by typing them in using the chat feature. When typing your question into chat, you will have two options. One will say everyone, and the other will have just my name, or it'll say panelists. If you do want your question to be anonymous, just choose the panelists one. And questions will be answered toward the end of the presentation. So again, you will be able to ask them, but it'll need to be through chat. You can also use the Q&A feature. So Lynn is a dog trainer and canine massage therapist who lives in Escondido, and she is a certified dog trainer through the Karen Pryor Academy, and as a massage therapist through the Rocky Mountain School of Animal Acupressure and Massage. And just recently, woohoo, she recently received her CSAT, which is a certification to work with dogs with separation anxiety. Lynn worked at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park, which is now something else, so I think I need to change that, for 15 years, where she worked as an educator and zookeeper. So thank you, Lynn, for being here, and the screen is yours.
Woohoo, the power. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me. I'm really excited about this talk and presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Keep your fingers crossed. All right, here we go. Okay, so thanks to the FACE Foundation for giving me this opportunity to talk to you all about this topic that I feel really is very important to me. So humane rattlesnake avoidance in your dog, it can be done. I've done it, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. Let's get going. All right. Oh, there's my puppy. Okay, so who am I? Who is this person that's speaking to you right now? So I was born and raised in Southern California, specifically the San Fernando Valley, the valley of, you know, Valley Girl. So yes, I guess I was a Valley girl. I did hang out at the mall quite a bit as a teenager, so that might qualify alone. And you might even hear a little accent in there. I try to keep that in wrap. But I received my bachelor's degree from the University of California here in San Diego, and also my master's degree from University of Colorado at Boulder. I also worked as a ticket seller. So as soon as I start talking, my dog is now wanting to get out of the room. But so hopefully I don't have to step away. But at any rate, so I did work as a ticket seller, a tour guide. I prepared diets, and I was worked a little bit as a zookeeper and an educator and a trainer, all at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. And I did that for 15 years. And that's actually where Annie and I met, was at the San Diego Zoo Safari Park. I don't know the new name, so we'll have to look that up. At any rate, so then after I'd worked there for a while, my husband and I adopted this little girl here at the age of, she was 5 years old. So we adopted her from the North County shelter. And she had some issues. And so I was really interested in training at that time. I did some training at the safari park, but not not dogs. And so I really wanted to focus more on that. And so I looked into the Karen Pryor Academy. That's where I became certified. And then I was also interested in massage and helping dogs to relax because she was not a very relaxed girl at that time. So, so I became more interested in that and became certified in that. And then recently, just as Annie had mentioned, I got my certification in working with dogs with separation anxiety. So again, you can, I'm really focused on dogs feeling calm, dogs feeling better about their environments, dogs not having to feel fear. That's my big thing. What can we do to make our dogs less frightened of the environment around them? So when working with rattlesnake avoidance, right, that tends to be the kind of direction that it goes to, that a dog should be afraid of particular things. And so I'm trying to make dogs less afraid. So that really got me thinking, well, how can I train that in a different way so that dogs don't have to be afraid of things that are around them and can just learn to avoid based on indications from us or other cues to stay away from particular things. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So in 2015, that's when I started my own company, the Proficient Pup Dog Training and Massage. All right, so I'm going to get right in there. So what does traditional rattlesnake avoidance training look like? So if you surf the web, what are you going to find? Majority, if not all, at least in San Diego here, I'm one of maybe 3 people that used to do it. And I don't think the other 2 are doing it right now. So I may be the only person. I don't want to say like I'm the only person doing it, but I may be. I haven't really found anybody else that's doing the training that I'm doing right now in San Diego. But so what does the traditional rattlesnake avoidance training look like? Um, Dogs are shocked through the collar wearing what's called an e-collar. Sometimes it's called a vibration collar or a shock collar. I'm trying to think of some other names, but it's all the same thing. It gives a pulse of some kind that varies on the strength to shock the dog. And it's to do just that, to give them an indication that something that they are doing is not what we wanted. And we'll talk about more about how dogs can't always figure that out, that it's not something that we want. So there's something else here you can see right here with my mouse. This is called a scat mat. So it's got kind of a little pathway for the electricity to go through and works the same way. When the dog steps on that, it gives off an electric pulse that deters the dog from wanting to stand on it, right? So that's the whole point of shock, is to do something introduce the dog to something that they're not going to like. So that's one aspect of working with the dogs. The other is the snakes that the traditional trainers are going to be working with or around. Some of them will muzzle a snake. That means they wrap up the mouth. They can put tape around it. So they're closing it so the snake doesn't bite or doesn't strike out. They will hood snakes, which is just what that sounds like, put a little hood over their head so that they can no longer, their senses are subdued. So sense of smell, hearing, and taste, which they also need, and sight. All of those senses are going to be suppressed. And or defang them. Some will take the teeth or the fangs right out of the mouth of the snake so that, again, if it strikes out, it can't do any damage. So in addition, they may even place them, or as an alternative, even if they're not doing that, they may place them in a terrarium, which is this box that you see down here on the right corner. I think we've all probably seen something like that in pet stores and things like that. It's just a glass box and the snakes go inside there, and then the dogs can't have access to the snakes and the snakes don't have access to the dog. Usually this training takes place in about 15 minutes. Typically, that's what's advertised. That's what I've found as advertised. And then these trainers will use different kinds of environments. Parking lot at a vet hospital, or in a feed store, or at an animal shelter, sometimes people's personal backyards. And so what happens is, and what they don't advertise is, but has been scientifically proved, and there's a lot of data on it, is that shock creates fallout. So what I mean by fallout, if you're not familiar with that, is that it can create, as it says here, a fear of the general environment where that shock happens. So you can think about it where if a dog is receiving this shock, that they are not just, if it was done when they looked at the snake, they may associate that shock with the snake, but they may also associate it with the things that are around in their environment at that time. So, is there a pool in the environment? If somebody's backyard, is there a pool there? And now will this dog not want to be around pools because they felt that shock when there was a pool there present? Were there children laughing in the background, or were there children present? So the dog may associate that with the presence of children. It's really hard to say how a dog is going to interpret that shock. Some of them might go ahead and associate it. Oh yeah, it's with that thing that this weird, odd looking thing that's in front of me in this box, or that's loose. But they will also associate it with other things in their environment. And really, it can be children, hoses, pools, leaves, right? A hose can look like a snake wrapped up. So then you have a dog, you bring them home, and they have fear of many other things, which is not really what people are looking for in that rattlesnake avoidance. You can kind of think of it like you learn to play piano, right? So you're learning to play piano. And let's say every time you didn't quite hit the right notes, your teacher would kind of smack your hands. Maybe it didn't even hurt. It was just a little bit to let you know that's not the key that you were supposed to play. But it's a physical sort of slap on the knuckles. Pretty soon, you're not wanting to probably play very much at all. And even if you do play and you make it through your lessons, and your lessons happen on a Wednesday, maybe you no longer look forward to Wednesdays, and maybe you no longer like piano, or you like sitting at the piano. Maybe you don't even like the room that the piano is in. So that is how fallout works. One thing is happening, but when it happens in a particular environment, we're not so keen on that environment anymore, right? So, so that's how you can kind of think about what fallout is. So these traditional rattlesnake avoidance trainers will also offer a refresher course. I put that in quotes there because it's going to be similar to the initial 15 minutes. It's just they do it again, and they do that a year later. So these trainers offer this because they know that there is no guarantee that this is going to work, and there's no guarantee that it will even continue to work. So, which is different than the training that I do that I'll show you in just a moment. So, that's there's that to be aware of as well. There aren't any guarantees. Oh. So what does innovative rattlesnake avoidance training look like? What does the training that I do look like? So I reinforce dogs with treats. That's going to be a big way to get them to understand and feel loose and understand that they're doing things that I want them to do. Even if that's moving away from something I don't want them to get near, I can reinforce that with the treats for responding to me or the handler or whomever. It doesn't matter. I teach them cues, and then dogs respond to the cues, and they receive treats for that. If you're asking your dog to move their body in particular ways, I mean, these are sentient animals and they have the ability to move and think on their own. So if you're asking them to do something, it's nice to pay them with a paycheck, right? We want to get paid for things that we want to do. And if it's harder, guess what? We want to get paid more. The harder something is to do, we want more payment for it. And when we don't get paid enough, we tend to resent that. And we tend not to want to do that thing anymore. So the training that I do takes place mostly on a leash or a long lead, which is a way of saying a long leash, sometimes 20 or 30 feet, or it can be on a smaller leash. That's mostly the training I do. We'll watch a video later on with some training that's done off leash, but I need to be pretty sure that the dog is that the dog understands the communication that's going on really well before I'm gonna be feeling like I trust the dog to be off leash. I don't use any snakes. I don't use live snakes. I don't use dead snakes. I don't use snake sheds, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. And the training takes place over 5 1-hour sessions. So rather than the 15-minute session, which can sound really desirable when you're looking online, wow, 15 minutes. I am hard pressed to think of what I could learn in 15 minutes. Can I learn to fear something in 15 minutes? Sure, probably quicker than that. So that part doesn't take long, but that's not really training or teaching, right? We're not teaching the dog anything except be scared, be afraid of your surroundings. And we don't want them to be afraid of their surroundings. We just want them to stay away from that particular thing that we know can harm them. They don't know that. So if we know that, then we want to teach them to respond to us, right? That's all on us. So, so at any rate, over 5 1-hour sessions, I concentrate on teaching people how to interact with their dogs and to give them cues, and I teach the dogs to understand those cues, so that there's some communication going on there between the handler or the owner or the client and the dog that they have with them. Um, the practice also, any of the practice that's taking place is going to happen outside of the sessions. So the sessions are meant for me to be teaching them, teaching humans and teaching the dogs. And then it's up to the handlers to be doing the practicing when I'm not around. That's where it gets strong, right? They're only with me for 1 hour a week. So the environments are also going to be chosen by the client. So it all depends on what the client's looking for. Sometimes they want to be walking their dog on a sidewalk in a city or in a neighborhood. Sometimes they want their dog just to be in their backyard. Other times they might decide they want to be, walking their dog on the beach because snakes can be found on the beach. So there's different situations. And so when I'm training the behaviors, that part's not so important for them to be in particular environments. But when I use, and I'll talk more about this, when I use the fake snakes and the decoys, then we can choose different environments for that. So that the dogs are really getting to work or get used to the environment that they're going to be in. The refresher is really going to take place only if the handlers, the owners, do not maintain the behaviors that they've learned, that they're working on in the sessions. So 6 months later, if they've stopped working, if they just worked those 5 sessions and then they're done, they're probably going to need a little bit of a refresher to really get those behaviors going. But these behaviors are going to be good for everything and anything else in their lifetime. So usually people keep up on it. And then they can also use it. Let's say they called me up and said like, well, I don't have all these decoys. I'd like to practice that again. We haven't had any interactions with, any snakes or anything, thank goodness. So I'd like to work more with those decoys. That would be the refresher of working more with something that those clients don't have themselves. Okay. All right. So I didn't put a picture of a snake because I didn't want to bother anybody. I know photos of snakes and things like that bother. So hopefully feels nice and easy for you. The snake has a smile. It's just smelling you. That's what the tongue is doing. It's just smelling. Look at the eyes are so cute. Anyways. All right. So are live snakes needed? So really people ask me this question quite a bit and my answer there is no. So the way I do training is I promote a lot of choice in the animals I'm working with, in this case, dogs, right? I want them to choose to respond to me, to be in certain situations and choose to listen to my cue, choose that. I don't want to work with force. So then I have to consider, when I was thinking about rattlesnake avoidance, what's the choice for the snake? If it's in a box, terrarium, that's not a choice. It's stuck in there. It can still see the threat around them, right? We think of snakes as predators, especially a rattlesnake. Dogs are predators. And really, when the snake's looking at the world, the dog is huge and giant. So they have really they have a couple defenses. They can slither away or they can rattle and make noise. And hopefully the other animal responds to that and backs away. And then if they are not able to achieve what they need to with those things, then they're going to strike out. So I don't want or need to put a snake in a situation where it's going to feel panic and nervousness and like it needs to strike out. That's not really, in my view, it's not humane. And I worked with snakes at the safari park. So that's where I got a good connection with those snakes. And I felt like I'm not really keen on the way that they're treated by people who are doing the traditional rattlesnake training. So right here, I consider using that snake's cruel. That's my opinion. And defanging, if you're defanging a snake, that's mutilation. It's removing a body part. And I don't support any sort of forced hooding or muzzling. If an animal can participate in that, participate in putting the hood on, like a dog can you can ask a dog to put a muzzle on and they will calmly. So if they can participate, great. But I'm not spending a whole lot of time training snakes to wear a muzzle. So that's not somewhere I'm going. So I don't support forced hooding and muzzling. And training with scent, sometimes people want to know, well, don't we need the live snakes for the scent? Training with scent is very challenging, to put it mildly. So not much is known really even about how snakes smell, meaning give off a scent as individuals or as a species. So that's sort of an unknown. There's some research onto it, but and there's some indication that some species do have a different odor than others. And then there's questions. So does that mean each individual does? I mean, a king snake predates upon rattlesnakes. So hopefully the rattlesnake needs to be able to identify a king snake without just getting up right close to them, right? So there's reasons to believe that yes, they do have strong sense of smell, but there's reason to believe that they do give off individual scents. And, or is it when they're frightened, which means that's going to be giving off a different scent. If you're using a live snake with dogs, they're probably going to be giving off a different scent than they would at another time. Or is it different if there's a female carrying eggs? These are some questions that I don't know the answer to, and I have not found research yet. So there's 4 species of rattlers and non-venomous species in San Diego. And so if I were going to use snakes, I would need to generalize and use all the species, all the sizes, all the different positions. They can be sunning, they can be straight out, they can be rolled up and curled up, they can be, part way in a bush, they can be all the way in a bush. So, and different kinds of movements that some make. And then all different kinds of environments, right? They can be found in the mountains and they can be found in the parks, in grass. They can be found at the beach, in the deserts and with the sand. So that becomes a really big picture for me to try to use live snakes to generalize all these different kinds. And most importantly, why I don't use live snakes is that it's illegal, right? So sometimes people are like, what? It can't be illegal, but it is. So I will show you. So the California Department of Fish and Wildlife is the department that takes care of and sets the rules for how humans interact with the wildlife. So they have what are called the Native Reptile Captive Propagation Laws and Regulations. Nice big long title that basically says, here's the instructions for how to interact with the native reptiles. That means reptiles of all kinds, not just snakes. Snakes are reptiles that come from California, that are found here naturally, not brought from other places, but found here naturally. So in the state of California, it is legal to capture, and you can even kill 6 of the 7 species of rattlesnakes without a license. You do not need a license to capture them. You don't need a license to kill 6 of the 7. One of them is protected. But there are limitations what you can do with those rattlesnakes once they're in your possession. So it doesn't say you have to kill them, but if you don't, then what can you do with them? So there's limitations that they set out, and there's a lot of information in their laws and regulations. But I will show you momentarily the one that's most important to me. So that I know that businesses that are using snakes in their rattlesnake avoidance training classes, they really are breaking the law, because in section 43, paragraph C, native reptiles may not be sold, possessed, transported, imported, exported, or propagated for commercial purposes. And so right there, the most important part there is commercial purposes. So while they are absolutely saying, oh, it's fine, go capture and kill one, you can't use it to make money. And that is what the trainers who are using them and charging to train a dog to be afraid of them. They're using them in that commercial purpose. That's what makes that illegal. So you can, for yourself, look up your own state's laws. If you're not here from California, or if you're interested in learning more about your own state, you can do that as well. So what do we know? What's our relevant data? Here's a friend's dog who was bit by a rattlesnake. So this is what the dog looked like just after he got bit. There's a small little speck of blood right there. You may or may not be able to see it. He had just been bitten. You can start to see that there's some swelling there. It looks a little uneven on this side compared to this side. So there's some swelling there, right? So we can already start to see that. And, by that evening or the next day, here's the picture of the little guy in the hospital. He survived. So no worries. He's a little guy though, right? So lots of dogs get bit on the mouth because they're curious and they go up to smell the snake and they're interested in, hey, what's that? Or maybe it's making noise, or maybe it's slithering. So they don't know to be afraid of it. And in fact, even if a dog does get bit by a snake and then goes in the hospital, that little initial bite may not have even felt like much. Maybe it just felt like a little pinprick. Maybe it didn't feel like much at all. And the dog is definitely not going to associate getting bit by the snake with any sort of like long hospital stay or days of stress. So even dogs who get bit may get bit again because they cannot associate the long hospital stay or that like I said, with the stress of what they went through. They're not going to go back to that. So at any rate, so teaching again, like that just goes back to say, does teaching through fear or pain work in that situation? It doesn't, because dogs do get bit a second time. So what actual threat do rattlesnakes pose? This is pretty important. So if we're worried about our dog, like this little cutie here, what actual threat is there? So what we do know, what we do know is what we don't know. The number of venomous snake bites in dogs in the US is unknown. Okay, that's not helpful, right? If we are worried about something, we want data. We want to know that. Unfortunately, there isn't a database that vets have, a central database where they can enter information from all different parts of the country to be able to say when a dog in their care has been bit by a venomous snake. So they don't have that information. So we also don't have then the number of venomous snake bites that then result in fatalities. We don't have that information either. So when you're faced with a lack of information, but a very real worry that your dog is going to be bit and possibly killed, then we have to think about, well, what options are there to protect my dog? So management is one of those things. Management is preventing access to particular places, right? Keeping your yard clean of debris or log piles where there's going to be rodents, where snakes like to go for food. Or if you have trees that drop a lot of fruit on the ground, making sure that's cleaned up, because again, it attracts rodents, which will attract snakes. So that's what what can we or you do in your own personal environment to reduce the risk of snakes around you? There's also snake fencing that can be installed that can prevent snakes from coming onto your property. So that's management. Then there's training. That's where I come in. What sort of training? What can we teach the dog? What can we help them understand about particular things? Can we teach them to be afraid of individual items or animals? Or is it better to get them to respond to us when we assess that something is a danger, right? Because it might not always be a snake. There's plenty of dangers around. So when we assess there's a danger, what do we need our dog to do to respond to us? Are we going to shock them for seeing whenever they see a raccoon, or shock them when they see a rabbit, or shock them when they see all these things? No, we can do it a different way. In fact, having worked at the safari park, I often think, people would probably be horrified if a zookeeper said, oh yeah, there are snakes, here in this exhibit that have access to an exhibit. So we shock the, people would be appalled. I'm not saying they do this. People would be appalled if a zookeeper said, we shock the rhinos, we shock the giraffes, we shock the antelope to teach them to stay away from rattlesnakes, right? First of all, that would be very labor intensive. But instead of doing that, which would be appalling, right? We would not expect that from zookeepers. We would instead expect that the zookeepers are going to fortify the environment, make it safe for the animals to be in there so that snakes can't get in, or that there's less of a worry, right? Removing some low brushes, removing places that snakes are going to be. So, but at any rate, or even training. If there were danger in those field exhibits, then you could call those animals over to you in some way. So there's ways to work around other than just fear. So I also want to mention that there is such a thing as a rattlesnake vaccine. It does exist. If you go to the manufacturer's website, there's no studies on the efficacy of the vaccine. And so again, once again, we don't have data on that. And so oftentimes, vets will offer the vaccine, but the idea behind it is that there's not really much. It's not that we should depend that if our dog gets bit, if our dog has been vaccinated and then they get bit, that they'll be fine. So vets and animal professionals would not want you or want the public to believe that, but instead that maybe it gives you a couple extra minutes. It gives you a little bit of time to get your dog to the vet where they're going to get the treatment that they need. So it's not a cure-all. It's not a that you don't have to worry anymore about snakes. It's that this thing happened. I've got a few extra minutes to get going to the vet hospital. All right. So more data, please, right? I'm not a scientist, but I rely on it for information that I want to have to improve my training. So what do we know? There was some stuff we didn't know. Here's what we do know. So the ASPCA estimates that there are maybe more than 100,000 snake bites in dogs and cats each year, and that mortality rate. So remember before I said they don't have that number. So this is an estimation. The mortality rate, somewhere between 1 and 30%, depending on the size of the pet, the species of the snake, and the location of the bite. So there's lots of different venomous snakes in the United States. We have rattlesnakes here, and we should feel pretty happy that they've got that rattle that hopefully they will shake at us and let us know that they don't want us to come near. But there are many other snakes in other parts of the country that don't give any information like that at all. So it's going to depend on many factors, right? And 1 to 30% mortality rate, like, well, which is it? Is it 1 or 30%? That seems huge to me. But then there's other factors that can determine mortality. The size of the snake, the amount of venom the snake injects, that's important. The number of bites that the snake gives, the depth of those bites into the muscle, that's really more important. What's the age and health of the dog? What's the time that's elapsed before the treatment was given? And what's the dog's susceptibility to the venom themselves? So again, lots and lots of questions. But it's still enough when it's our very own dog to be worried, right? To be like, I don't want that to happen. It's big enough. So what can we do? The best thing that we can do is just be wary of all snakes. Know that all snakes are have the potential to injure. Rattlesnakes are going to possibly be very injurious or cause very much causing injury or death. But even a snake that's non-venomous might bite, and then the bite is open to infection. So really, we just don't want to have to worry about trying to figure out which snakes are safe and which aren't. Just be wary of all snakes is a great rule to follow, but also learn about them so you can accurately assess the danger that's in front of you. So we don't have to panic just because we see one. So how does this work, right? I've talked a lot about the snakes already, but how does this training work? My focus isn't really on the snake. I call this rattlesnake avoidance training, but my focus isn't on the snake. It's about how the dog is learning to respond to me or their handler when, again, we decide that the object's a threat. So right here, these are two big threats. Coyote right in the neighborhood, hanging out in broad daylight. Like, hey, this is cool. Any cats around? And then we've got a raccoon, seemingly minding his own business, hanging out in maybe just off the path where you're walking. So those can be threats as well. So when I do my training, the snakes are part of the training, but I'm really teaching the client to be able to use the behaviors that we work with to prevent any interaction that may pop up. So different kinds of threats, coyotes, raccoons, other dogs might be threatening to your particular dog, maybe a moving vehicle, maybe mountain lions if you happen to be hiking there near mountain lions, or even people. Sometimes people are very threatening to dogs. So some of the behaviors that I teach, like a leave it, come when called, stay, and even something called an emergency recall, a way to call your dog back in an emergency. That means like, this is for real. Those behaviors are just a few that I work with that help the handler get focus from their dog. So when there might be a threat that's around that they have to worry about, right? So they have things in their toolbox that they can say, okay, I'm gonna rely on that to be able to get my dog to focus back in on me. All right, so I have some videos here to show you. Let me see how we're good on time. So some videos here to show you of some dogs that I've worked with. So these little guys here are such little cute cuties. So the woman and man who wanted me to work with their dogs, they walk their dogs mostly together, and they were really worried about that they had seen a rattlesnake on the sidewalk, and so they wanted to learn how to keep the dogs away. So, you know, they could just pull the dog away and go with, but the man was afraid that what if he didn't see the snake, or what if the dogs pulled him over to the snake? These guys are little, but still, it was an older gentleman, and he didn't want to be pulled into a situation he didn't want to go into. So, and they're older dogs as well, 7 years old. So let's look a little bit about how this went. So first, I wanted to be able to train each dog, right? Each dog individually to respond to the cue. This gentleman wanted to use the word snake. He felt that if he saw a snake, that's what was going to come out of his mouth. So that's what he wanted to use to get the dog's attention on him. So the dog could follow with him on their very own 4 legs, happily go along. So we're going to watch that. You can see there's the snake here. This is my decoy, little snake sitting there, and then kind of in the same place, and then here. So at the beginning, when I first do the training, I want to make sure that the dog can really see what the decoy is. And I do not want the dog to get too close. I don't want the dog to identify that a thing like that is harmless, right? I don't want them going up sniffing. Oh, okay, this is nothing. That was perfectly safe. I don't want to teach them that. So we just work on focusing in with the handler. So let's look at what that looks like. There we go.
Snake.
Nice. Okay.
Snake.
There we go. And right there?
Snake.
There you go.
Good.
And me saying right there is just to help him. Again, not get too close, closer than I was comfortable. So I was giving him a cue to get his dogs the cue. So, and that's how it is when you're working and it's beginning. So I don't expect people to be professionals. They're just working something that's new. Okay. So here's a couple of doggies. A client who called me she's a professional dog trainer herself. These dogs were called what's called clicker savvy, which means they're very familiar with the clicker that I use, and that they have a strong positive learning history with this client, very familiar with getting treats. And so they already knew the behaviors already. So all she wanted help with was the working with the decoys. So she wasn't really sure how to do that herself. She wanted to know how to do that. So she asked me to help her. So in the top one, she's got her 2 dogs here. In the top one, you can see there's the snake in the middle of the patio, which she lives in a particular place where she has seen snakes in this area. So we were, again, working in the environment she wanted to work in, which was her very own driveway. And then watch for how this dog responds to her and this little wiggly tail that happens at the end. So that wiggly tail is not going to be there when you're using shock. Little bit. I love it. Okay. And then this was her other dog. This was after several attempts with this snake. We had done this for several minutes, I should say. And the dog was very interested in getting close to this. So this is when we started to see some more response to her asking. And what I also want you to take note of is the leash as it stays loose. So there's no need there to pull the dog to go with her. Good. Nice and loose. The dog just, all he did was, oh, that thing is there and you asked me to go, so I'm going. Okay, so at this point, and the dog that's on the top is a little bit older. It was getting kind of warm. I think this was our last go by the snake. So also she was getting kind of tired, but she was just like, you know what, I'm good. She's still looking at it, but she's just gonna walk on by. Which is sometimes an option when you want to get your dog past something. Let's just walk by, give it plenty of room, and we'll just keep moving. All right, and then now this after we had done a few more of these sessions, so watch this dog's reaction. Nah, not interested. I took a look at it, was like, nope, I'm good. That's what we want. Okay, another little guy. So this is little Jack Russell. This dog was their only dog, and they had walked him. He was also another older dog, 9 years old. So this dog had recently been bitten by a rattlesnake, had jumped into a bush. They were just walking in their neighborhood, heard some rustling in the bush, and just was like all in, right? That's kind of Jack Russell's like, see you later, and you know, I'll be back later. I'm gonna do my own thing. So just jumped in the bush, and then gave a little yelp and jumped out. They didn't even know what had happened until later. Once a few minutes later, they started to see a reaction in their dog. And then I think it was, they had gone to the vet, and then a neighbor had said they saw a rattlesnake there nearby. So then they kind of put two to two together. So their big issue was, how do we keep our dog from just jumping into the bushes when we're walking? All right, so we worked here. We didn't work at their home. I'm not sure exactly what that setup was, but we decided to work here at this home, and we had a nice area here. I did different things, but this snake that you can see right here, I've got a line on it, so I'm pulling that along to give some movement to draw the dog's attention. So this person decided to use, they wanted eye contact. They didn't want to have to ask the dog to, they didn't want to say snake. They didn't want to say come. They chose this instead. So I like to work with what the human is comfortable with.
Right there. That was it. Perfect. Don't let him get too close. There. Nice. Perfect. That was great.
I'm so excited.
Good.
So you click when he looks at you.
Right.
Trying to operate a camera and the snake at the same time.
All right, that's it for him.
I was like, I don't really care anymore. It's moving, and I'm interested in the treats that you have. So great. All right. So this particular client called me just a few days later and left me a voicemail. So she says, or said, I have to fill you in on what happened last night. I was in the kitchen, minding my own business. The door was open to the backyard. Normally, he goes in and out, and he doesn't listen if we say, no, you can't go out, especially if something's out there. He started barking, 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 jumping up and down, running to me, would not go in the backyard. And I look out and I go, what's that big pile out there? And in the middle of the lawn was a big rattlesnake curled up, and you could see that the tail, the rattle, was like up. Just amazing. So thank you, thank you, thank you so much. We are convinced that you helped save our dog because we don't think he would have survived. That was a real big snake. And then she goes on to say, what a happy story. He came and got us and refused to go out. Unbelievable. We've never seen anything like this, so thank you. So I don't put this here to say, look how great I am. Look how awesome I am. It made me feel really good that this had happened. Not that this had happened, but that the dog had not interacted with that snake. That just made me feel good. But what made it so neat for me was that I hadn't trained this. We didn't train this. I didn't train in their backyard. I didn't train that if the snake was there, you bark at us, you jump up and down and run around and bark at us. So we didn't train any of that. What you saw is what we trained. So when I was talking before about fallout from shock, and sometimes we don't always know what the dogs are going to associate with that shock, it can happen the other way with positive reinforcement, with teaching them something. There's often what I like to think of as spillover into other behaviors. The dog becomes more relaxed in general, becomes more confident in general. And so maybe what this dog was doing is not what it looked like to come over and go, hey, look, there's a snake out there and I'm scared and I don't want to go out there. Maybe that wasn't the case. Maybe what the dog was saying was like, hey, anytime I've seen something similar to that, we were doing some training and I would get treats. So I get treats, right? Like there's a thing out there and I'm going to get treats, right? Maybe that's all he was doing. But does it matter? No, because he didn't go near that thing and he chose to stay near his parents and to be with them. Even if it was because he thought he was going to get a treat and associated that thing with treats, fine. He didn't go out there. He didn't go next to the snake, and he didn't have to go to the hospital. So that's really good. That's what I love. Love hearing stories like that. Okay, so last couple. I call these guys Rough and Tumble. They're so cute. This wasn't their name, but oh my gosh, it could be. So this man and woman were interested in their training for their 1-year-old and German Shepherd and their 2-year-old Rottie Shepherd mix. And so during training, they had moved into a new home that was adjacent to a brushy field, and you're going to see that. But they were really worried about rattlesnakes coming into their yard. So it was really important for their dogs to be in the yard, do the training in the yard, and also off leash, because that's how the dogs were going to be. So I said before, I was like, I'm not so sure about that. I really need to know that the dog can do it, because I don't want the dog just off leash and then goes right up to that decoy. So here we are in the backyard. You can see there's that snake decoy right there. And this is all some low brush that they were in the process of getting rid of. And then on the other side of this fence, a big old brushy field, perfect rattlesnake habitat, right? This is a brand new home and they were just getting used to everything. So this one, the owner felt very comfortable with leave it, asking the dog to leave it. That's what they wanted to use. So that's what we worked on. And you're going to see how we take off that leash.
There you go. And then you can take her off when you're ready, yeah.
Leave it.
Nice.
Leave it. Leave it.
Look, I'm looking at it.
Oh man, good dog. Good dog.
Leave it. Leave it.
You can really see the dog just checking at it and going, look, don't I get a treat for looking at it and not going? Watch, I looked. Did you see me look? There we go. Nice. I looked again. All right, there we go. Nice. Excellent. And you can hear how excited Dad was, right? That's why he stopped, or she stopped. Because Dad was like, good dog. He couldn't believe it. He was just so excited that his dog was doing this in the backyard, where they normally are very distracted by things. Okay, so my goals, all in all, in teaching this rattlesnake avoidance the way I do, I'm educating humans really as much as I'm educating the dogs. I want to teach them about environmental management, which I told you a little bit about. I want to be able to talk to them about rattlesnake behavior because I'm not teaching fear. I don't want to teach humans fear. I want to teach them how to think and assess the danger that's in front of them so that they can think about what they need to do to keep the dog safe. If we're panicking and our dogs are in our charge, then they're going to panic. If we don't know what to do, we're the ones supposed to be telling them what we expect from them. We can't expect them to understand what we're telling them if we're panicked and we don't know what we're doing. So that's really important. I want to educate humans about dogs' body language, what they're trying to say, whether they're really excited about something, whether they're relaxed about something. That's important. And I want to really build the skills and abilities in both dogs and humans. So especially stressful time, right? So some people are going to be okay with looking and meeting, seeing a snake. Maybe they've seen several in their life. Maybe somebody's never seen snakes before, and then they see one and they feel stressed. And so I really want to help them increase their confidence in themselves as well as their dogs, so that again, they can keep themselves safe and their dogs as well. All right, so we've reached the point. Everybody's waiting for me to stop talking about their dogs. This is a real life picture of my husband. No, just kidding. But at any rate, if you need to reach me, here's how you can. If you're interested in signing up for snake avoidance training, you can do that. Or if you just want a little more information, you can go to my website at theproficientpup.com. There's my phone number as well, 651-6364 with a 760 area code. And then you can always email me at lwebb@theproficientpup.com. So that's it.
Thank you, Lynn. I didn't know when did Ron start wearing ties?
No, that's the only thing that shows that that's not him, right? It's the tie.
So thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that was awesome. We really appreciate it. We did get a couple of questions. The ones that are not rattlesnake avoidance training related, I'm going to go ahead and put in an email and forward to Lynn, if that's okay, Lynn.
Oh, sure.
And then when she responds to me, I'll just go ahead and forward to the people who asked the question. But we do have a question. It says, I just moved from California to Tennessee near water and have already come across 2 harmless snakes. How can I find out more about snake-proof fencing?
That's a great question. So, yeah, that's a good question. There's a company, and I'm like, maybe I can get that. I want to say it's called Rattlesnake Solutions, right? And they're on YouTube. And so if you look up Rattlesnake Solutions and they're in Arizona, it's an Arizona-based company. I really like them because actually, I follow somebody on Twitter that and I'm not sure if he runs the company or not, but he puts videos out all the time about rattlesnake proofing in properties. And then also what I love is that they will go out and they capture rattlesnakes and they will relocate them. And so he shows releases of that and stuff. So that's really important to me too, that people aren't just coming and going like, oh, these don't need to be here, and we're just going to execute them and eliminate them from an environment that really needs them, right? So if you look them up, I believe, like I said, I think it's called Rattlesnake Solutions. I know they're in Arizona and they are on YouTube, and they've got lots of really neat videos. And there's a video there about rattlesnake proofing your home and what that fencing looks like and the specifications. It's best to get a professional. So what I would advise against is looking it up on YouTube, something else, and going like, yeah, that's something I could do that, because it requires a lot of knowledge to get it done correctly. You don't want to spend it's expensive fencing. You don't want to spend a ton on it, and then it doesn't go into the ground correctly and it doesn't give you the protection that you need. So hopefully that helps. I can't really help you with a state other than that.
Okay. We have another question. This person has already seen a baby rattlesnake under brush. Dogs love to sniff bushes, worried that we don't see it, and dog sniffs one and is bitten. I know you talked a little bit about that with the training video. So yeah.
Okay, so she's worried about seeing she's worried about it being a baby. Is that the question?
It looks that way. Baby rattler, just going down the street maybe, and the dog starts sniffing under bushes.
Oh, okay.
So it seems like that's the concern.
Okay, yeah. And there's lots of babies out there, right? Because life's got to start somewhere. So sometimes people think that baby rattlesnakes are a little more dangerous. That's not necessarily true. It matters. The bite is not what it matters. It matters the venom. The venom that the snake is injecting. So that's sort of a myth that baby rattlesnakes are more dangerous. So it's still a concern. It doesn't mean like you can be like, oh, baby, that's cute, because they could still cause damage. You just don't know how much. And so what I would advise, with at least what it sounds like that question is saying, is to, when it is that venomous snake weather, which means it's going to be a little bit warmer here in San Diego, it's kind of almost all year round, right? It's warm enough. And so making sure that exactly like those things that you just saw, you can use a leave it, you can use here to have your dog not be sniffing up under bushes. And dogs like to sniff, right? They like to sniff bushes because dogs have peed on there before, so they like to sniff that. But particularly if it's that time of year, you're like, we're not gonna sniff bushes a lot, right? Let's go sniff grass instead, or let me walk somewhere where there's not a whole lot of bushes, or walk the dog on the other side of me where they don't have access. So there are things that, again, that's management. There's things that you can do to protect yourself and your dog in that way. I hope that helps you.
Okay, we actually have, while you were answering that question about baby rattlesnakes, we had another question come in about that. Can you just comment a little bit more, because there have been a number of people believe that baby rattlesnake bites are more lethal than adult snakes. So can you just comment on that a little bit more?
Yeah, it's the reason that it's a myth is that the idea is that because like babies are going to be more scared, and they're just going to not be so picky about where they put their venom. So they're going to strike out and then release all of their venom in that particular bite. It's not true. So that it's just the belief isn't true. But in addition to that, it does have to do with how much venom a snake is putting into the animal that's bothered by them, right? They do it to subdue a prey item. That's what they're doing it for. However, if they need to protect themselves, they're like, hey, this works, right? So it matters how recently a snake has eaten. So that matters if they've put their venom into something else. And so it's often believed that maybe that snakes coming out of estivation, I'm not going to go in the difference between estivation and hibernation, but they estivate. So coming out of estivation, that because they haven't eaten for a while, that the first thing they're going to grab, they're going to put all of their venom into that. That hasn't shown to be true either. So it really varies so much. I mean, I guess if we could talk to a snake and ask a snake how it decides how much venom it's going to put in. So it can be making all sorts of assessment, the level of threat, the size of the animal, all sorts of things that they could be assessing. But there's no way for us to depend on that. So that's why it's just better to, whether it's a baby or an adult, I mean, that is not what we have to assess. We don't have to sit there and go, well, this is just a baby, or it's an adult and it's winter time, so they're not eating right now anyways, or it's summertime, so they've probably just eaten, so I don't have to worry. We don't assess any of that stuff. Like, that's not important. What's important is that there's an animal there that could be hazardous to your animal. What do you do to get them safe?
Okay, and I just, a couple people asked this. We are recording this webinar, so it looks like we may go a couple minutes past 5. That's okay. No, that's okay. So if you do need to leave at 5, we will have this webinar recorded and available to you to view. So no worries, Lynn. Thank you. I love your information, so don't even worry.
Okay.
We have a couple more questions.
Okay, no problem.
I I have a big dog that's extremely playful and loves all movement, like the Jack Russell in the video.
Mhm.
Do they take longer to train to get to avoid all the rustling movement around them? They're working on desensitizing around squirrels, lizards, and do most dogs pick that up pretty quickly?
Yeah, it really does, not to be wishy-washy with, I feel like all my answers are like, it depends, but not to be wishy-washy about it, but it does depend on the individual that you're with. So that you're with. So yes, there are high prey drive dogs. There are dogs with higher prey drive than some others. Rustling in bushes, like that can attract any dog's attention. So sometimes if I find that the dog is not really caring about the decoys, just kind of like, just sitting there, not really super interested. Once I put it on that string in amongst leaves and things, then they kind of perk up. But again, the idea is that you're building their resilience to just wanting to go after something instead of listening to you. So the more that they experience that, so we repeat that over and over and over again, the more that they experience that they get great things when they come to you, it really is easier for them to let go of whatever that might be, even if they're still really interested. And the other thing is, again, we wait for that decision making to happen. So the dog might be like, what is that? And it's just holding still. We just wait until the dog is able to redirect, or we can call the dog. And then once they go, then they get their reinforcement and we walk away, give them a break and things like that. So speed varies.
Okay. So what do you do about a dog with a high prey drive?
Yeah, so that same thing. So we would start out slow and then we just build from there. And I haven't had that yet where I've had to do another session with the decoys. I do two, but I haven't had where I had to do a third one because if the dog is advancing really well, we can get it moving faster. We can do a lot of different things. And if it's getting, if it's still challenging, then we just work on what the challenge is. So usually by the time people are finished with the 5-hour course over 5 weeks, they feel pretty good about their animal responding to them. And that's really what they're looking for. So if a rabbit goes by, that's probably going to be different than a little sound of rustling in the bushes. So there's levels of prey drive as well, depending on what it is they're going after.
Okay, I'm going to actually combine the next two questions.
Okay.
So one question is, do you use noisy decoys like a rattle? And where do you get the decoy snakes?
Okay, I just found the decoy snakes online. I just looked around at different snakes. There are some really bad ones out there. I tried to get ones that were kind of realistic. They go from like, the cheapy little toys that don't look so great. There's some medium ones that look pretty good. And then there's like really fancy, expensive, like sculptures you would put in your home, which are maybe not going to work for me either if I break one. But you can find different ones online. I just looked the other day for some more, and I just saw my same favorite ones. I was hoping to get some new ones, but they had the same favorite ones. So if you're looking for a new thing to do, you could go into that industry of making some snake decoys for people. You'd have one customer at least. And then what was the other one? The snakes, where to get it, and
the noise, like
the
a
noise.
rattle or something. Yeah.
Yes. And so I use an app. I use an app with some rattle sounds, and I'll use that. I put a speaker near a bush or whatever. And sometimes, again, it's just a sound that a dog might be attracted to. So in all of this, I'm trying to get the dog's attention on something else and get it back to the owner.
Okay, so this is going to be our final question.
Okay.
And like I said earlier, any rattlesnake avoidance questions, I'm going to go ahead and forward them to you via email.
Okay.
So the next question, moving to central Arkansas, water moccasins are prevalent and very aggressive. So would you use the same style of training?
That's a really great question. I haven't had to work around, I haven't had that experience of being around water moccasins. So I don't know if they're really, if you see them frequently or if they're easily avoidable. But, living here in Southern California, there are rattlesnakes abound, right? And I have seen maybe a couple in my entire life. So, or maybe 3 or 4. even though there's a lot around. But I would say, yes, the idea is still the same. It's all going to come down to connecting with your dog so that they respond to you when you see the threat, whether it's a water moccasin or a rattlesnake in California, or, you know, a coyote or a raccoon or whatever might be in your particular region. If you're worried about, can your dog respond to you when you need them to? That's the important part, because you know, what's the option? Shocking them for every single thing that they see? Yeah, it's going to be, that'd be very expensive. Less.
So Lynn, I lied. There were 2 really good questions that came
Oh,
in.
sure.
Sorry.
No, I'm done. I'm out. No,
I'm trying, no, really.
I'm just kidding.
Time's up. So I promise, last 2
Okay.
questions.
Okay.
Okay, so here's the first of the last 2. So for dogs highly encouraged to sniff and explore, they do scent work. Would this just be considered another tool in the box type of training?
Sorry, repeat that. I didn't quite understand. So for
Okay.
dogs.
For dogs highly encouraged to sniff and explore, they do scent work. Would
Yeah.
this just be considered another tool in the box?
I think so. I mean, I think so. I don't do scent work, to be honest. So, but I find that it's the same. I do know people who do scent work, and it's not that they can't call their dogs away from things that they don't want them to. So the idea is that with scent work is that there's going to be indications to the dog that you're asking them to go do, you know, go look for things and go follow scents. So there's a time and a place for it, from my understanding. It's not just anywhere you go, whenever you go, that the game is happening, right? It's at certain times, it's certain scents that they're following, and certain indicators that that's happening. So so I feel like it would just be the same. And maybe I'm simplifying it. And again, maybe I don't know enough about scent work. But how I feel, like I said, I know trainers who do that, and I also know that they can call their dogs away from things and give indicators to their dog that they don't want them to be over by something else, if that makes sense.
Okay, so this is going to be the last one.
Okay.
So what would you tell people about rattlesnake avoidance who have large property where the dogs roam around unsupervised most of the day?
Okay, so I've had those phone calls where somebody says, I live on 5 acres and I do have fencing around it, but my dogs are able to go. They're outside while we're at work, and they just have access to the property. How can I teach them to stay away from a rattlesnake? And what I usually tell them is that it might be able to be done, but I don't do that. So that's beyond asking an animal to understand to stay away from things that they don't know to do, and teach them how to do that when we're not around to help them. It's very difficult. It's very difficult to do. Not impossible, but it's very challenging to do. And so for people like that, I will either recommend like having a smaller area that their dogs can have free access to. It doesn't have to be a small pen. If you've got a big, huge property, you can still make it fairly large, and then secure that. Put rattlesnake fencing in that particular area that your dogs have access to. So it doesn't have to be 5 acres of fencing. It can be smaller. Your dogs still have the ability to kind of move around and be free, but you don't have to worry. So management is going to be huge on that. Okay, that's my answer. That's my final answer. My final question.
Well, I want to thank you, Lynn. You always do an amazing job with these webinars. Thank you so much. And thank you for those who were able to hang in with us a few minutes past 5. Everyone will get an email relatively soon with a survey. Also, the webinars have been posted on our website as well. This one isn't ready yet, of course, but it should be viewable by next week. If you have any other questions that we didn't get to, I think everyone has my email address, admin@face4pets.org. Again, a couple of you did submit some questions. I'm going to forward those to Lynn. We do these every month. And so something I want to talk to you just 2 seconds about is the Wagon Purr Shop. It's amazing. It's our new online shop. I love it. I've already purchased a number of things. If you want to volunteer or make donations to FACE, you can always go on face4pets.org. Thank you, Lynn.
Hey,
and
welcome.
Thank you, everybody. And we will see you next time. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.